What is up, everybody? It is another edition of Orange and Blue Today. That's right. Cecil Lammey, Andrew Mason talking about Daniel Jeremiah. Yes, Mase, this is one of my favorite parts of the year because it's before the combine, it's before free agency, it's Daniel Jeremiah, the top draft analyst that's out there for NFL Network. He gets to talk to the media. You were in on that conversation with DJ. I got to tell you, Mason, one of my favorite times of year.
You probably hate being on the radio, don't you? And missing this.
I hate missing out on talking to my buddy DJ. That's for sure.
But buddy, how close are you?
Yeah. DJ's first media job, quote unquote, was on the Audible for 2 years. So. No,
wow,
Daniel
how about
ever
that?
since he stopped scouting, and then he went back to scouting, but he was on Twitter for like a day, and Sigmund, my co-host on the Audible, was like, get that guy on. So we had him on our show for 2 years.
Nice.
Daniel Jeremiah. So I've known him since he was just dipping his toe in the media world, but now, I mean, one of the best out there when it comes to talking draft.
He's big time. And
oh yeah,
what he does every year before the combine is he does a conference call with media from around the country for 2 hours, takes questions for the entire 2 hours. And so you get on there and you get on the Microsoft Teams meeting and you raise your hand virtually. And over the course of 2 hours, you hope that he gets to you because, you know, there are a lot there. He's going to go through a lot, and let's face it, there are a lot of questions he's going to answer that aren't going to be endemic to the team that you cover, especially if the team that you cover is down towards the back end of the first round. And so I'll say I looked at the people asking questions on the conference call, and I'm like, oh, okay. Boy, I hope they call on me here because otherwise we might not get a Bronco question answered. But it turned out, answered a question from yours truly, answered a question from our good friend Parker Gabriel at the Denver Post. We did get some Broncos-centric victuals from Daniel Jeremiah. Now, start with this, okay? He had his pre-combine mock draft last week. Okay.
Yes, just came out on NFL.com.
Yes. Pick number 30. He did not have the Broncos going offense. He had the Broncos going for this guy right here, CJ Allen, the inside linebacker out of the University of Georgia. Guy who will not turn 21 years old until next month, but somebody who's been productive really from the word go at Georgia. Very good against the run. You see they're productive in terms of pass rush, productive in terms of dropping into coverage as well. Definitely stronger in the box than he is dropping into coverage. That's definitely more of his strength, but he does have speed, and that's something to which Daniel Jeremiah alluded when he did talk about CJ Allen today. And so that was part of what I asked him. I did the old, the dreaded 2-part question. And one part was asking about CJ Allen and what he liked about him, slotting him at number 30. And another thing worth noting, Jeremiah broke down where he thought this draft was strong. And he noted defensive line. You and I have talked about that.
Yeah.
Inside linebacker, we've talked about that a lot.
Very rare that it's inside linebacker being
but it's one of the reasons why we say, okay, the solution at inside linebacker, maybe it's multifold. It's not just potentially in free agency if the Broncos want to reset the position, but it's also the draft. Kind of like tight end last year. This is a good year to go inside linebacker. DJ has 4 inside linebackers inside his top 50 prospects this year, but it goes deep. It goes into, the top 100. I mean, Jacob Rodriguez, who I love, isn't in DJ's top 50, but he's very much a day two type pick. Kyle Lewis, a guy out of Pitt that I love. He's not in DJ's top 50, but he's very much a guy who could be there and picks 51 to 100. I mean, that's the thing. You've got you got depth, you got quality at inside linebacker going well through the draft. So that's something you consider as you talk about inside linebacker here. But it's a strong crop at the top. It's strong and deep as well going into the draft. So it's not just strong at the top, it's strong as you get into the middle of the draft as well. So that's something to consider as you look at this class. But CJ Allen, there's a good chance he's inside linebacker number 2 off the board in this draft. DJ has him going right now, going number 30 to the Broncos. Here's what Daniel Jeremiah likes about CJ Allen and what he likes about him specific as a fit for the Denver Broncos defense.
When it comes to CJ Allen, he's, it's a case of when you're going through that process, he's just one of the best players, available, and who's going to run. I think he'll run like the 4.5s once we get a chance to see him in Indy. He's just a real physical player. This is a fast defense, a lot of fastballs. And then what that can do is sometimes it can create a little bit of space there. And he can suck it up. He can do it with speed. He can do it with physicality. He's the communicator for that defense. He can kind of be the nerve center. He's someone, I talking to their coaches there and said he got there in the spring. All these freshmen now, they all show up in the spring before their freshman year. So technically should still be a high school kid. And he said this guy was making like every tackle in practice is, 17, 18-year-old kid who should be, a senior in high school. So he arrived on the scene ready to go at Georgia, and I think he'd be a great fit.
Yeah. One of the things you hear in that response, and he kind of alluded to, arriving kind of ready to go for somebody who's still relatively young. He would arrive to his NFL team 21 years of age. He's very mature. So don't kind of get caught up with a younger chronological age than you're going to see with some of these guys. He's going to come in very mature. And frankly, the fact that he's going to come in with a decent amount of maturity despite his chronological age, that's something that teams may look at and say, wow, okay, here's a guy who's got plenty of tread on his tires. He's relatively young. He's not 24, 25 years old, which you're going to see with some of these prospects. And yet he seems to be very settled, has a good head on his shoulders, not to mention all the physical attributes that he brings. So that's probably something that I think maybe separates him perhaps from some of these other inside linebackers, and why you're probably going to see him end up sneaking into round 1, and why you're seeing him pop onto a lot of these mock drafts there in the back half of round 1, and why you're talking about him being there, being somebody that you're seeing mocked in the back half of the first round, and why Daniel Jeremiah has him there. So it's an interesting discussion. So I'm going to ask you what you think of CJ Allen.
Yeah.
And then I want to dive into more of something else he said. So first, your thoughts on CJ Allen and what you see on the film.
Yeah, and with CJ Allen, I use the term heat-seeking missile.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he is. A linebacker, to me, has to have the ability to scrape and flow to the play. So whether the play goes right or left, do you have the ability to miss the big bodies and go for the ball carrier? And you see with Allen on film, he is that heat-seeking missile because he makes a decision. It's usually the right decision. It's not like he's plugging the wrong hole. He makes the decision, and he's got the athleticism to miss those big boys that are trying to block him along the way and go down that line of scrimmage and make that tackle either at the line of scrimmage, just a little bit past, or sometimes even behind the line of scrimmage. So it's that intelligence, the nose for the football. And I'm glad you brought up his maturity, because that's something a lot of people say, oh, young guy's not mature, but a young guy with a 5th-year option, think about that. By the time he's done with his first contract, he will be entering his prime, and you will have prime seasons from what should be a first-round pick.
Yeah, and the other thing with maturity is when you're talking about inside linebacker, a question you're asking yourself is, okay, can they be a green dot guy? Because with almost every team in the last few years, where there are very, very rare exceptions, but with almost every team, you're talking about one of the inside backers being the guy that's going to be the green dot. And so in other words, they are the quarterback of the defense. That's the guy that you're not taking off the field. And so that kind of leads to two things. Number one, they've, like you say, point to the head. They got to be smart. They've got to be able to control everything. Number two, they've got to be a tremendous all-around player. Now, of course, Alex Singleton, the green dot player for the Broncos last year, certainly up here, terrific. no question about
No
what
doubt.
he brings. And Vance Joseph has talked about Alex being the extension of him on the field. Now, then the other question becomes, can you be the all-around player? And we know with Alex Singleton, something to which we alluded earlier this week, the issues in coverage. We talked about that number, the passer rating when he's the nearest player in coverage, 97th of 98, according to Next Gen Stats, among linebackers with at least 100 coverage snaps. That's something that does concern you. And of course, we think back to plays like Saquon Barkley beating him on the wheel route in Philadelphia back in week 5. CJ Allen, certainly, he's not a finished product in terms of coverage. It's something he will have to grow into. But when you look at his athleticism, and if he does run that 4.5 time speed, as Daniel suggests he will at the combine next week, you are making a projection, but you're saying, okay, he's smart, he's diligent, he's mature, and he has the raw physical tools. This is somebody who you could project and say, all right, a couple of years from now, maybe even sooner, he could be a plus player in coverage. He would have all the tools necessary to do that,
Right.
to be that type of player, and then truly would be an asset on every down. And you'd say, okay, fine. He's got the mental tools, he's got the physical tools, he's got the speed, and then eventually he has the coverage capability to where, you look at, to allude to that passer rating number that I threw out from Next Gen Stats, a player who was near the top of that league-wide, who's in free agency, is Devin Lloyd, who's going to hit the market. And we've talked about him.
Oh, yeah.
Could CJ Allen be somebody that you're talking about in 2 to 3 years who's at or near the top of that statistical category? Absolutely, he could.
Yeah, no doubt and no question there. With a guy like Allen as the leadership on the field, and when it comes to coverage, Mase, I look to the brain. We already know the kid's smart. In coverage, It's kind of the same thing. Don't bite on the wrong play. Don't bite on that play action fake, and be where you're supposed to be. He's got the upside to be a 3-down player and a perennial Pro Bowler.
Yeah, because you can have the speed, and that's all good, and certainly that would be an attribute, but a lot of that's going to happen at the start.
Yeah.
If you lose that in the first couple of steps, 4.5 speed can allow you to make up for some sins, but not all of them. It's still going to, it won't cover up for everything. It can cover up for a lot, but it won't cover up for everything. So it's the other thing also. So he would make sense in terms of player quality. And DJ, by the way, I believe had CJ as number 22 on his big board. Okay. So Broncos picking 30th, and on his big board had them at player 22 in terms of his big board. So by that, you'd say value. Now, the flip side of that, as you and I have discussed, is this. It is such a deep draft for inside linebackers that quality is going to be there into late round 2, round 3, even round 4. And so if you're looking at how deep the draft class is this where you want to bite on inside linebacker? It's probably a more relevant question if the Broncos had more needs on the roster, perhaps with a roster that has relatively few holes. It's something that is a less potent question than it would be in other years, Cease.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll steal a term from our friend Mark Schlereth. Allen's a football playing Jesse. Yeah. And at the end of the day, give me that guy that arrives at the ball with bad intentions, because that's what you see with Allen, a physical style of play that, I mean, quite frankly, we love Danny Trevathan, but he wasn't the physical guy. Like, I'm thinking Al Wilson type of playmaking ability.
Remember, Danny tested really badly at the combine.
Yes.
Now, he had great film coming out of Kentucky.
He did.
But he tested so badly at the combine that he fell deep into the 6th round of the draft, and the Broncos got a huge steal. Now that's, we come out of the combine, you talk about steals and potential value. That's always something to look at and say, okay, who ends up falling, because teams end up getting scared by some of the measurables that come in, whether we're talking about the time speed or we're talking about a player that ends up weighing in at less than you expect, or they end up, checking in height-wise less than you expect. You look for values. Now, the Broncos, they tend to be a team that likes their measurables. They like to lean into the RAS metric, relative athletic score. So they tend to sometimes not go for the value there. But to me, it's always something you should consider.
Yeah, it's always something you're watching during the draft. And what do you guys think out there on YouTube? Drop a comment down below. Is a linebacker, an inside linebacker like CJ Allen, something that you want in the first round?
Now, here's the other part of it, because the thing that I asked Daniel Jeremiah was this. He had CJ Allen as the pick, but another reporter asked him about, okay, if you're the Patriots, what would you look at in terms of, okay, who do you bring in? What do you do here to kind of finish the job? They make it to the Super Bowl, they fall short. And so I said, okay, I said, all right, you're the Broncos, you fall just short. What are you looking at if you're the Broncos to try to push them over the top? And so is it the player that he had mocked, or is it somebody else? And that led to a very interesting answer. Here's Daniel Jeremiah talking about that.
Yeah, I think there are two positions they love to address would be the running back and tight end positions. The challenge is kind of where they are in the draft. I don't know how that's going to fall for them. One name I would keep an eye on there as we kind of go through the combine and go through the spring. I have Jeremiah Love is going to be long gone, but his teammate Jadarian Price, I wouldn't be surprised if, as we go through the process, he were to kind of jump into the back of the first round discussion and become potentially an option there. Someone who also has some kick return value, but I think he could be a number one back. If he was playing anywhere else, he would have been. Just happened to be playing with Jeremiah Love, but he's got vision and balance. He breaks tackles. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Didn't get as many opportunities because of Love. But he's someone that I think's got a chance to be a 3-down complete back, which would be a great pairing with Harvey for that group. And then I think, tight end wise, whether or not they look for that in free agency or, it could be something in later rounds they could look to address. But those are two positions I think to get better offensively, they need more.
Okay, so Jeremiah Love, 226 touches last year for Notre Dame, and of course he's going to go top 10. I'd be shocked if he falls past Kansas City. Like if he's there and
KC's there. If
he's there when KC picks, I think they're running to the podium with the card. I guess you don't really do that anymore because of how the draft is set up. I'm going with the old thing back in the day when it would be at Madison Square Garden and whatever, and you'd kind of when they had the phones and all that, and you'd run up. But yeah, back in the day, you would run to the podium with a card. I would think they'd do that. I wouldn't even be surprised if the Chiefs considered trading up to pick Jeremiah Love, because this feel like Love to the Chiefs feels like a situation where. And, I go back to the 2020 draft when I thought, oh man, if they picked Jonathan Taylor, that's trouble for everybody else if they do. I feel the same way about Jeremiah Love if the Chiefs pick him. That's trouble for everybody else.
Right.
But so Jeremiah Love, 226 touches, and he racked up over 1,600 yards from scrimmage, 1,652 yards from scrimmage. So Jadarian Price very much in the shadows. Jadarian Price only had 119 touches last year and had 761 yards from scrimmage, 6.0 yards per carry, so pretty efficient. Only 6 catches, average nearly 15 yards a catch. He touched the ball 119 times, and in those 119 touches, you want to talk about efficiency and finding the end zone, Cease. 119 touches and 13 touchdowns. And that's on offense. Okay. And I want to throw up another thing here as I just go and take a look at, and I have just the little stat slide that we have here on him right there. Last year, you see his rushing total. Over the course of his career, 27 touchdowns and 322 touches. So he's very efficient over the course of his career. But look at that. And Daniel Jeremiah alluded to what he did on special teams as well. 36 yards a kickoff return. Now, of course, the Broncos do have Marvin Mims Jr. on kickoff returns as well. But what that shows you is the kind of explosiveness that Jadarian Price possesses. And you see 5'11", 210. So he's got the body type to be an every down back. He's not, this isn't a small back. This is somebody who's, pretty well built, but he's got speed, explosive. He's got speed. He's got explosion to him. And the other thing also, just to throw that back up there, 322 touches at Notre Dame. So sometimes we talk about running backs and it's like, okay, they've been overused. Remember Monte Ball when the Broncos brought him in 13 years ago out of Wisconsin? Okay. Well, it's the exact opposite for Jadarian Price. He's got plenty of tread on his tires. If anything, he's underused, quite frankly.
Right.
So,
and at any other place, when he's not behind Jeremiah Love, we've seen this before with other running backs in the world of college football. And Price reminds me of like a Trevion Henderson. Of course, he was in a starting chair with Quinshon Judkins. I look back, I'll go back old school because you mentioned backs with a lot of heavy workload. Ricky Williams had like 1,200 touches, whatever the number was. You see with Jadarian Price, a guy that can go in there and be almost not necessarily Priest Holmes, but a guy that you can look at and go, here's a player, just like behind Ricky Williams, there was Priest Holmes. Just like with Trevion Henderson, there was Quinshon Judkins. It's reverse this time because I think he's more Henderson-like. But I don't look at it. It's the same thing I think about Singleton, the Penn State kid. Like, yeah, he's behind Katron Allen, but that's still a back that can play. So just because he's a reserve or was a backup, I don't look at that as any reason to be like, oh, well, it wasn't even the starter. No, it means value and less mileage.
I mean, it's quite possible with Jadarian Price that that he's somebody who literally would have been RB1 at any other program.
Yeah.
In college football. He just happened to be behind the most pro-ready running back in all of FBS last year.
Right.
In Jeremiah Love. I mean, look, Jeremiah Love is legitimately like he is this year's out of the box, ready to start running back. Like he is like that. He's the guy that you plug and play, ready to go. But the more you look at Jadarian Price, obviously the sample size is limited, but with what snaps he's brought, he looks like he's ready to go as well. And he looks obviously incredibly fresh. Now, most of the projections have him there sometime in round 2. And to just take a look, for example, at Daniel Jeremiah's big board, he had him, I believe, 42nd, if I'm not mistaken, or 43rd. Pardon me, 43rd. So right there, starting the middle of the second round. It wouldn't be that much of a reach to pick him at number 30, but it would. I mean, you talk about immediate impact, and that's what you'd be talking about with Jadarian Price. The thing that there are a couple of things. Number one, like I said, I mentioned that he did average 14.5 yards per catch last year, but 6 catches. So extremely limited as a pass catcher in terms of production. Now, RJ Harvey was limited as a pass catcher at Central Florida, but not that limited. So you are making a projection here. Number 2, 119 touches on offense last year, 3 fumbles. Okay. So there's something that, all right, is that a sign? Is that something that can be corrected? Is that a sign of a potential problem going forward? Now, that being said, he had, in terms of his rushing, he only had 1 fumble in his 121 rushing attempts the year before. So it's possible that the fumbles last year were an outlier. So he had 4 fumbles as a runner at Notre Dame, and 3 of them were last year. 1 of them the previous season, the previous 2 seasons. So maybe it was an outlier, but I think that's something you'd want to examine first to say, okay, what happened on those 3 fumbles? Is that something that you're worried about going forward? Because you look last year and say, okay, 3 fumbles in 119 touches, 113 rushing attempts, because all the fumbles were on the rushing attempts. That's something you'd say, okay, 3 fumbles, 113 rushing attempts. That's more than one. That's 1 fumble every, every 38 rushing attempts. That's a little bit of a concern. That's if that carries going forward. That's not acceptable. You're not going to be able to live with that.
The thing with Price, and it was something, I don't know, kind of alarming when you texted that to me that said, hey, DJ was talking about Jadarian Price as an option for the Broncos to, in your terms, like get him over the top. Is he similar or too similar to RJ Harvey? And maybe it's just me and my own bias of I like a 220-pound back to go with a compact back. You have a 211. Now he's not compact. He's 5'11", 211.
Right.
But
different build.
I'd have to take a look at his frame to see if you could add a 10 pounds of muscle, hopefully not lose that speed. But his Price, one of the most explosive players in this draft class, is he maybe a little bit too similar to RJ Harvey? And like me, do you want someone that's like different, a big back, a power back?
Yeah, that's the question, because they both have speed and explosion. Now, that being said, I mean, RJ is actually stouter in build. RJ is stouter in build than Jadarian.
Right.
That is the thing, of course, because their weight's very similar. Jadarian's got it kind of spread over 3 inches more. And that's actually, I mean, I think RJ is probably closer to 5'7" than 5'8". I mean,
right. Yeah.
We've seen RJ in the locker
next to him. He's a short man.
Yes. Like that, but short is fine. Like, you don't care. That's fine. And RJ got a fair amount of yards because he was short and because he could burrow through, and he's because he's got those strong legs and he's tough. Like, that was the thing that I think was probably maybe a little bit of a surprise, a pleasant surprise, was how he got some yards that I think people maybe didn't quite expect, that were just making his own way through a thicket of huge players. So maybe it's, part of how his role is evolving. But it was interesting to hear DJ talk about how he thought that Jadarian could be a good partner to RJ, when I look at it and I look more of it as a back like Mike Washington Jr., a bigger back, a 220-pound back, being somebody who's probably a better partner for RJ Harvey. So it's, as we say, reasonable people can disagree, but Jadarian's definitely explosive. Again, I'm intrigued by the skill that he shows on kickoff returns as well. I mean, there's a home run threat with Jadarian Price.
Oh yeah,
too.
No doubt.
And the thing that is interesting here is, while Mike Washington Jr. he's probably a great long-term complement in terms of skill set. if you go back to the whole notion of, all right, this offense needs juice, to use the Vance Joseph term. This offense needs playmakers. Jadarian Price is a playmaker.
No doubt.
If we go back to that thought for a moment, is Jadarian a better fit? That's the question I'll leave you with for a moment here. Is this skill set actually, if maybe he's not the perfect skill set complement to RJ Harvey, but is his playmaking ability a better fit for what this offense is missing right now?
Right. It's a question for our folks out there on YouTube. So drop a comment down below if you would love a Jadarian Price. Is he too similar to RJ Harvey? Would you rather a CJ Allen, an inside linebacker prospect for the Broncos in the first round? Let us know in the comment section down below. As we look to our YouTube goals for 2026, Mase, they're up there. So hello, goals. Hi, we'd like to meet you someday.
They're in low Earth orbit. That's how high they are.
Yes.
They're so far up, they're higher than the press box at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, and we know how high that is.
That is very, very
Hello
high.
Up there.
Hello.
Wow.
How are you? Welcome. How can folks give us some help so we can attain those goals in 2026?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you
never
miss
vid.
That's right. He is Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mase Denver. I'm at Cecil and Mase saying OBT is a BFD. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty?